Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online player request character build with me, Sherman. Today guys, I bring you the Frost Fang character. Now, the Frost Fang has an interesting story behind it because the person who gave me the idea said, I want a wood elf, Warden, vampire tank. And I said, okay, that sounds really cool. So, the idea behind the story and where it came from was that this person was originally a knight who was with the Aldemary Dominion, or not the Aldemary Dominion, basically the ancient elves, the ones who helped stop Falchu in Glenumbra in that storyline. And when you go into the past and stuff, you're part of that group. And you figured that Falchu's so powerful, the only way that you could be more powerful to stop Falchu was to become a vampire. But he was already stopped after you had returned from becoming one. And yeah, so you wind up leaving and heading off on your own, and you wind up finding an ancient Dwemer ruin where when you went inside, it was had a few residual of ice elves that lived there, and they wind up imprisoning you for the duration up until now, when you escaped finally, or were released, actually, by a brother and sister combo who like to explore the Dwemer ruins of ancient times, and they didn't realize they had released you. And you head out in the world. Everything's changed now. There's these 3 different factions, and this is you now. So, let's go ahead and take a look at the Frost Fang. The Frost Fang is a Warden character. You can be any race with this. Wood Elf does work really good for it. As you can see, we have 30 into health, 34 into stamina. You can put more into health if you want. You know, like take it up to 44 and then put 20 into stamina, whatever you want to do. You just got to make sure your stamina pool is higher than your magical pool. This character is primarily a tank, and I do need to get the disclaimer out of the way, because otherwise I'm going to forget. So, for anyone wondering, this character is a roleplay, casual play character made for that purpose. They are not a meta build at all. So, getting that down to the way, yes, primary role tank. You can be a damage dealer with this; it still works. And it's got a kind of a unique setup to it. So as you can see, we have 18k magic, 31k health, 26k stamina. We do have 918 mag recovery, 905 stam recovery. Weapon damage isn't too bad, and neither is our weapon critical, but we are in tank mode right now. We do have 2500 spell resist with 2500 physical resist. This is unbuffed. We are using the Lady Mundus Stone. We do have Tri-Stat food, and we are a vampire. Now, we're going to go over the gear. And you guys can already tell, we do use Vampire Cloak with this, but you'll see why we use it with the way this is set up. It's really cool. It works out really well. So, going over the extra food and stuff, you can use Tri-Crown Pots for when you're tanking. You can use the Warrior Pots for when you're playing Damage Dealer. And you can use the Spell Power Pots if you want to play a healer. This build can do that. And it's pretty good at it. It's not great. Tri-Stat food is going to be your primary food of use most of the time. Alright, now moving on to the sets. First one, you guys can already tell, Ice Hearts. I can't make a Warden tank without throwing Ice Hearts in here for some reason. I really like this set. As you can see, Ice Hearts gives you 1-piece spell critical and then the 2-piece. When you deal critical damage, you have a 20% chance to gain a damage shield that absorbs 9,976 damage for 6 seconds. While the damage shield holds, you deal 1,016 frost damage to all enemies within 5 meters of you for 1 second, or every 1 second. The effect can occur every 6 seconds. So this will last for 6 seconds, doing 1,000 something damage and giving you a shield. And then the effect can happen every 6 seconds. So this is pretty much going to be up almost all the time. Alright. Moving on to the body set, and you guys are going to guess it before I even say it. Hunting's Rage. Nope. Gotcha. Night Mother's Gaze. And the reason I chose Night Mother's Gaze is so when you play this character, as like a damage dealer, you have the ability to get major fracture on more targets than just one. Because of the way this character works, you'll see why you can do this, and you can take advantage of that higher penetration value. So the 2-piece of Night Mothers does weapon critical, 3-piece weapon damage, 4-piece weapon critical, and then the 5-piece. When you deal critical damage, you apply major fracture to the enemy. Now it says to the enemy. It does apply it to multiple targets. Any enemy you deal critical damage to will get major fracture applied to them, reducing their physical resistance by 5,280 for 6 seconds. I know what a lot of people are going to say. Warden already has the major fracture on this other thing that lasts for 6 seconds. This is like uptime all the time. So I really like using this set for that. This is primarily here for when you're playing damage dealer. For being a tank, we are using the Vampire's Cloak. And again, this is the same as the other vampire I released today, the Dark Knight. But please understand, these are different builds, and they play completely different. And this one works in a different way than that one. Because this is a Warden, that's a Necromancer. You can take advantage of more ice stuff with this than you can with the Necromancer, in a sense. So, as you can see, the 2-piece max health, 3-piece spell damage, 4-piece max health, and then the 5-piece. Gain minor protection at all times, reducing your damage taken by 8%. Now, you guys are probably going to think, well, you're going to use Ice Fortress to give you your resistance buff, and it's going to give you 8% damage reduction. We don't with this character. So moving on to the traits and the enchants. The traits we're using on the head is invigorating with a invigorating with a tri-stat. The tri-stat is to hybridize your character. The invigorating is there to give us higher health, magic, and stamina recovery. And then we are using reinforced on the chest with tri-stat as well. And then on the leggings we're using invigorating to give us that higher ability of recovery. See, without it, we'd actually lose 22 here and 22 here. So we'd be around 800 and around 800 and something. But when you buff up with your tripods, you actually go to 1,080 and 1,063. So this is going to help sustain you better as a tank. So that's why we do that. Oops. Alright, moving on through the traits. The smaller pieces, we do have 2 max health, 1 on the belt, 1 on the shoulders. And then on the, and they're sturdy. And then on the gloves and the boots are sturdy as well with max stamina. The reason I did this was to build out this character's health pool a little bit more, because we are a wood elf and health is kind of a small area for us. So we want to be able to maximize our health pool. So that's why I did that here. Now moving on to the jewelry, we are using 2 Trirune with weapon damage enchants. And then the third one is an infused magic recovery. Should have guessed that already. That's how we can get that higher magic recovery pool and have the high stamina recovery, is because we're a wood elf. Now moving on to the shield, we are using a divine shield. You can use something else. You can use sturdy. You can use invigorating if you want. The reason I did divines is so when I do equip something like a Mundus Stone that gives me higher resistances or higher damaged capabilities, I can take advantage of that while I'm using the sword and shield. Now moving on to the sword, we are using a Nirnholm sword with a frost damage enchant. This is just so we can have a little way of boosting our damage when we're playing a tank. We're not worried about doing Crusher or anything, so Nirnholm's going to be fine. It's also going to boost our ability with spells and physical damage while we're on the sword and board bar. So, moving on to the next one, we are using a 2-handed with a Crusher enchant infused. Why it's weapon damage, I don't know. It should have been a Crusher. Okay. It should have been a Crusher enchant. I might have just screwed up and grabbed the wrong one. But you can use a Crusher enchant here. This will apply that at a greater value. Again, I don't know why weapon damage is here. But I guess if you want to use a weapon damage enchant, you could. There's nothing stopping you. Alright, now that you guys have seen that, for when this character is playing damage dealer, oh, that's why, because this is supposed to have a Crusher bow, I guess. I guess I did screw up, because I put Crusher on the bow and it was supposed to have the weapon damage. So, my bad. This is supposed to have the weapon damage enchant, that's supposed to have the Crusher enchant. And then we also have another great sword with Nirnhone and a life drain on it to make us feel more vampiric with the life drain and stuff. So, and it does help boost our magic damage and our physical damage with this. So, all right, now moving on to our skills. Starting with our class abilities, make sure you take the class abilities that are going to best reflect your ability to play the character and the passives to go along with them. Always get all the passives. It's going to help you out in the long run. Same thing with the healing skills and the green balance. And in Winter's Embrace, make sure you unlock these skills that will best reflect you. Now, remember how I told you guys I don't use the Ice Fortress? I use Expansive Frost Cloak. This lasts 24 seconds, and it has a 28-meter radius. So this applies to everyone, no matter where they are, as long as they're within 28 meters of you. And you can help them stay alive with Major Warden, Major Resolve. So we use this more often than we do. Yeah, so we're going to keep this up a lot. Next thing to know is that always get your class passives in everything, no matter what. The reason why is because you never know what abilities you're going to use in what situation. So in this case, we're using a lot of these abilities for this situation. And then when we go over to the other stuff, we use other stuff. So. Alright, moving on to the weapons. Two-handed is going to be our primary back bar, so take the skills that best reflect that. You can also use it for damage dealing. One-handed sword shield, again, take the abilities and skills that best reflect your ability to play with that character. Bow, same thing. Take the ones that are going to best reflect your ability to play. And then moving on to the light armor, we do take the top three because we want to take advantage of the spell magic recovery, the reduced cost. We want to take advantage of the grace benefits for the snare reduction and the reduced sprint cost, and we also want to take advantage of the spell warding. Medium armor, top two, bottom one. Again, I'm not going to go over that. I go over these a lot. And then on the heavy armor, make sure you get all the passives here because you are in a 5-1-1 setup. So you're wearing 5 heavy, 1 light, 1 medium. The helm is medium, the belt is light, the rest of the pieces are heavy. Moving on to world skills. Soul magic, you can take the ones you want. I didn't do this time, but usually I'll just take the ones that best reflect my ability to play. And with this character, I'm actually going to go with Soul Assault instead because that's just a wicked damage ability. And then Vampire, we do unlock all the abilities and the stuff up here. Now you can see I do use the Clouding Swarm. This is actually really cool because it allows you to teleport to an enemy. So what I do is I'll use this if I'm in a dungeon or something. I'll activate it, and if I see an enemy at a distance, I'll use the Materialize to transfer myself right to them, and it does magic damage. So it's kind of like the teleport for the Nightblade, and I can do that with this as an ultimate. And it does cost quite a bit, but it's still really fun to use, and I like using it. So next, we have Invigorating Drain and Baleful Mist. You can choose the ones you want to use and when you want to use them. Moving on to the Fighters Guild, we do have all the Fighters Guild abilities and passives again, and same thing with Mages Guild. Sigil Quarter as well. And then moving on to Undaunted, we do have all the abilities and the 2 passives. The 2 passives are the most important thing to get here, along with the abilities that you want to use for when you're playing. Moving on to Alliance War, Assault skills. We do take certain assault skills to offer benefits to us and our allies. Same thing with support. And then moving on to Racial. The reason I chose Wood Elf wasn't because of this. It wasn't because of the stealth detection or the increased movement speed and physical pin and spell pin on roll dodge. It was mainly because of the Ifri's endurance. And the person wanted a Wood Elf. But Ifri's endurance is really good because it gives you that higher stamina recovery. And then this gives you 2,000 extra stamina, gives you poison resistance, and makes you immune to poison status effects. This actually can help a lot in certain places. Alchemy, medicinal use, and provisioning, gourmand, and connoisseur. So these are 2 very important ones because this makes your food last 20 minutes longer. And in the alchemy, medicinal use actually makes the effectiveness of your potions last 30% longer. So now let's go over the skills we have on our bar. Starting with the first bar, we have Pierce Armor, of course. This is our hard taunt. This is our damage deal, does a little bit of damage. It does apply Major Breach and Major Fracture, reducing enemies' spell and physical resist by 5,280. Next ability we have is Heroic Slash. Now, even using Heroic Slash, if we crit with this, we will apply Major Fracture. So we can keep Major Fracture up, no problem. So this does so much damage. It also does a CC, reducing movement speed by 4 seconds by 60%. It also applies Minor Maim, reducing their damage done by 15%. And you get Minor Heroism, granting 1 ultimate every 1.5 seconds for 9 seconds. Now, moving on, the next ability we have is Shimmering Shield. Somebody said, why don't you use this one? I do use this one, but it depends on the character build and depends on the situation. This one generates ultimate. It does absorb up to 57,000 damage from 3 projectiles, and each time you absorb a projectile, you get X amount of magicka and Major Heroism for 6 seconds. So, granting you 3 ultimate every 1.5 seconds. For the 6 seconds, you get like 9 ultimate. It's, you know. Actually, you get like more than that, but I think it's like, is it 3? You get 12, so that's not too bad. Moving on, the next ability we have is our Self-Heal, and then we have Polar Wind here for that. This will instantly heal you for X amount of damage and additional health. Sorry, it'll heal you for X amount of health and additional health every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. The winds sweep out and search for a nearby ally and heal them as well. This ability scales off your max health. Next ability we have is while a slotted ability, but this one, bolster your defense, reflecting the next spell projectile casted you back at the enemy. The reflected spell projectile stuns the enemy for 4 seconds, and then while you have this shield equipped and this ability slotted, the amount of damage you can block is increased by 8%, and your blocking cost is reduced by 8%. So that's why we have that. Next, we do have the swarming Cloud Swarm. This darken the sky with a cloud of bats, dealing X amount of magic damage to nearby enemies every second for 5 seconds. While the bat swarms around you, this ability changes to Materialize, allowing you to instantly teleport to an enemy and strike them for X amount of magic damage. So it's a really good one to use to get to an enemy really fast. Next up on the back bar, we use a two-handed weapon. The first thing we have here is Carve. This will be our thing that keeps our major, keeps our Crusher applied really well. It can also keep, I guess, now with this one, weapon damage. I don't know. But it does keep that applied, Crusher, really well. And then the next thing we have is the Gripping Shards. Now this will immobilize any enemy within it when you cast it for 3 seconds, and it deals X amount of frost damage every second for 12 seconds. Enemies hit are overcome with bitter cold, reducing their movement speed by 30% for 3 seconds. And then damage done is based on your max health and has a higher chance to apply the chilled status effect because of your class. So when you use this, it's actually kind of cool. The character just blasts out a bunch of ice shards around you, and this is kind of why it's called the Frost Fang. Because when you do this, ow, it's pretty cool. Next ability we have is Growing Swarm. Now this thing, unleash a swarm of Fletcher flies to relentlessly attack the enemy, dealing X amount of damage over 10 seconds. When this ability ends, the Fletcher flies infect up to 6 other new targets near the enemy. I don't know if you guys have ever seen some of the old classic vampire movies and stuff, but one of the things that they could do was they could summon a swarm of locusts or some swarm of insects to attack their enemies, and I always thought that was kind of a cool idea to incorporate into a kind of necromancer, not a necromancer, but a warden type vampire character. I just thought it fit really well. And it does do a decent amount of damage over 10 seconds. It is magic damage, and it is boosted because our next ability boosts our, this is boosted from magic damage. But our next ability boosts our physical damage, so this is really good for us. This also gives us resource return on stamina, and it gives us major brutality and major sorcery. So it does apply to our Fletcher flies. So I'm just going to show you guys this. When you buff up, your Fletcher flies goes to about 12,210 damage. Over 10 seconds, it's not too bad. And then the last ability we have is the Expansive Frostcloak. Now this just applies Major Ward and Major Resolve, like I said, in a 28-meter radius around you for 24 seconds. So you get that physical and spell resist increased by 5,280 for you and your allies. Last but not least, Aggressive Warhorn. This is here to boost our max magicka, max stamina, and it also grants major force, increasing your critical damage by 10% or 15% for 9 seconds. Before I do anything, though, I'm going to just do a quick fix on something here, because when I go into the dungeon, I want to be able to make sure that my stuff is going to work the way it's intended to work. So let me grab this stuff real quick. Crushing. And we're going to go with the weapon damage. There, now it's fixed. Alright, now we're going to jump over to CP. Taking a look at the red tree, we have 56 in Ironclad. This reduces damage taken from direct damage attacks by 20%. We do have 18 into Spell Shield, increasing our spell resistance by 1729. Moving on over here, we have 31 into Thick Skin, reducing our damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. 43 into Hardy, reducing our damage taken from physical poison disease damage by 10%. And then we have 43 into Elemental Defender, reducing the damage taken from Flame, Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 10%. Moving on over here to Red Tree, or to the last Red Tree, we have Bastion, 40 points, increase the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%. We do have 19 into Quick Recovery, increasing your healing received by 5%. And then we have 20 into Physical Armor Focus, increasing your physical resistance by 1900 for wearing 5 pieces of heavy armor. And I'm going to go over this again, because somebody asked me about this. They sent me a message. It was very rude. Not happy about it. But the reason I do this is because 1900 points is basically, you're getting 3% damage mitigation for having this. And then if you go over here, plus the light armor piece, and you incorporate that 300 and something to this, you actually go to a 2000 spell resist. So that's another 3% damage reduction, or damage mitigation. That damage mitigation comes off first, before your damage reduction is applied. So this allows you to mitigate more damage up front, and your damage reduction to take over. With having the 8% from the minor protection, we actually have 18% here on both of these, because we have minor protection at all times. This stacks with that, giving us a 31% damage reduction. This being at 20%, this being at that's 38% damage reduction. So when you think about it, I'm actually getting more out of my resistances this way than I am getting it out of doing the higher points into Hardy, Elemental Defender, Thick Skin, and this. I'm actually getting more damage reduction by putting into my Spell Shield and putting into my Heavy Armor Focus. And it works even with Light Armor Focus and the Medium Armor Focus. I've tested this countless times to find out, and you actually mitigate more damage this way. So that's why I do this. Alright, jumping over to the green tree, we have 40 into Warlord. This reduces your break free cost by 16%. We have 16 into Sprinter, reducing your sprint cost by 10%. 16 into Bashing Focus, reducing your bash cost by 10%. And then moving on to the middle tree, I did something a little different here. I went with all three here. We have 43 into in the Mooncalf, increasing stamina recovery by 10%. 43 in Arcanus, giving us 10% mag recovery, and then we have 43 into Tenacity, increasing our magicka stamina of our fully charged heavy attacks by 10%. Moving on over here, we have 40 into Shadow Ward, reducing our block cost by 16%. We have 28 into Tumbling, and we do get an extra 4% here, so we actually go to 16% reduced dodge roll cost. And then I had 1 point left over. I just dropped it into Befoul. Doesn't matter where you put it. That just worked best. So, moving on to the blue tree, we have 43 into Blessed, increasing your healing done by 10%. We do have 23 into Elfborn, increasing your critical damage and critical healing done with magic abilities by 10%. 43 into Elemental Expert, increasing your Flame, Frost, Shock, and magic damage by 10%. This right here, this 10%, also stacks with the 5% magic damage you get increase for being a Warden, and the 5% frost damage you get for being a Warden. So I wanted to take advantage of every aspect of this character. Moving on over here, we have 35 into Physical Weapon Expert. This increases your damage done with light, heavy attacks, and two-handed, one-handed sword and shield, dual-wield bow, and werewolf abilities by 20%. And then we have 40 into Master at Arms, increasing your damage done with direct damage attacks by 16%. And then moving over here, we have 43 into Mighty, increasing your physical poison disease damage done by 10%. 23 into precise strikes, increasing your critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 10%, and then 20 into thaumaturge, increasing your damage done with damage over time effects by 9%. And that is our CP. Now, like always, I'm going to take it over into Depths of Malatar to show you guys how this build looks in action, and I do have to say this, the person who asked for this build, you're going to see some interesting stuff happening in here with the way this build works. It's actually probably the highest CC build I've ever made with the way this thing can activate abilities and CC things really fast. So I hope you're ready for this. It's not like the best, but it is really good. And in fact, it surprises me how well it works based on the fact that we're not using an ice staff.
As in, no one left alive inside.
Take it to the Imperial senses.
Alright, let me make sure I got my food going. I'm going to go ahead and get through this doorway, and I'm going to buff up. I missed the chance to teleport to that guy. That sucks. And Fletcher Flies, just cast it and don't even worry about it. The reason why is because once that enemy dies, it's going to move on to the other ones. And it's going to start doing damage. And as you can see, Fletcher Fly does do a decent amount. It does about 2k damage on a crit. So... and when it does crit, it allows you to proc your monster set. So that's the reason why we use it. Now I'm going to see if I can get this to work. Oh. There we go. Ah, I love it. Sorry, I do. I really like that ability because you can do that. It's hard timing, but once you can get the timing down, it works out so well. Like, it just works really good. So I really like using that ability. And like I said, to the person who gave this idea or had this idea, this is probably one of the more cooler, fun Warden builds I've ever come up with because it's so unique, it's so dynamic in how it plays. It's not something you see every day, so... Oops, I missed him with that. But yeah, I can sit here and fight this guy all day. I'm going to go ahead and let him just kill me. I shouldn't have used my heal, but I'm going to let him kill me, and then I'm just going to go back to the beginning. It's going to take him a little bit, because my heal is... The heal on this thing is super good. And look at this, the damage that this thing is doing. It's not even doing near as much as what it normally does. The Wretched Bile hit me 14 times for a total of 18,447. And that's what initially killed me, but his slash, his rakes, all that kind of stuff, it's doing less damage because I have such high mitigation. So, because when I do buff up with this, I go to 30,000 spell and physical resist, and then on the when I swap bars, I'm at 26, 27. So I'm still pretty good even on the two-handed side. But that is it for the Frost Fang, guys. I hope you liked it. I love this build. I mean, for the guy who gave me the idea, it's awesome. This thing is just wicked in power. It's not like wickedly overpowered, it's just wicked in the way it works. And when you play this as a stamina damage dealer type character, if you're like playing around with your friend, I think somebody wanted this to travel with their sister or something, but if you play this as the damage dealer side using the two-handed sword with the bow, this thing can actually do really good, especially if you're using the Thief Mundus stone. So it's actually really good because you still get that major fracture that you can apply to multiple targets. So it's really nice. But that's pretty much it for the video, guys. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.